Okay, now here we are inside the Dodge Grand Caravan SE model, year 2010. Here's the central console, which we're going to take apart. I've also got on top the new Joying unit to show what that's going to look like. So we should be able to take this thing apart using only, I hope, a Phillips screwdriver. And I've done this before, so it's relatively easy to do. The first thing is on the bottom, there's a U-shaped sort of cowl around the the bottom, and so on the right side there are 3 fasteners, and on the left side there are 3 fasteners, and these are plastic fasteners that just need to be removed. And here's what they look like. It's made of 2 parts. So this is the part that fits in first when you're putting it back in again. So here's the plastic screw. Oh, my dog wants to see what it is. And the screw fits in to the anchor like that, and it's got a Phillips head on the end. And to remove it, you just unscrew the Phillips part about halfway and then pull on it, and it should pull out both parts of the fastener. And to put it in, you just push the outer part and then just push. You don't even have to push the Phillips part inside, and that should refasten it. So this is relatively simple to do. So now I should be able to get this outer part out of the way. Snapped in there. So there was a couple of snaps in the middle. Now this is still connected. The cigarette lighters are still connected. I could disconnect them. The glove compartment, the ashtray stays where it is. So the next step is there are 4 Phillips screws here, 2 on each side, and I suspect you probably only have to remove 2 of them, but who knows. I'll 4 of them off. Now the other part, I'm going to get this thing out of the way so we don't cause any damage. Is underneath the top of this unit here. There's a bit of an overhang, and there are 2 little rectangular tabs in the plastic, which you have to pry open. So I did this previously and I didn't put them back, but you just need a flat blade screwdriver to do it. So they're little tabs that are open, and let's see. I'll just shine a flashlight on there so you can see what they look like. Just the 2 little tabs, and if you look underneath, there are 2 Phillips screwdrivers, screw heads, which we proceed to remove. You can see it. And so these are all the same size of screws, so you don't even have to worry about mixing them up. So this enables you to lift up the top. There's a couple of plastic catches in there, and this exposes two more Phillips screws just behind the two that we removed. So we remove these two. And that enables the middle part to be removed. Now again, that has a bunch of connections for the blower motor, switches and so on. Here are the blower outlets for this unit. And then now the next thing is to remove the radio itself for same size screws. And that should free the radio. There it comes out. And so there's only two connections to the radio. One is the antenna, which has a little clip on it somehow. Remove. And this one is keyed actually, so there's a little, it only goes in one direction for some reason. Can't figure out. Well, the other multi-connector has a little tab on the bottom, and you push in and you remove it. And so this should fit into the existing unit. Now let me, just putting up a fight. There it is. Okay, so it was actually in the, near the cable end. You push in and that's the release. Now let's look at the radio. So this is the stock radio that came with it. It's basic, the basic unit. It wasn't the enhanced one with DVD and video and stuff. It probably makes things easier. And so the only connections here was the right hand side, looking from the back, was the active connector. The one on the left is a dummy connector. It doesn't seem to have any connectors on there. And then there was the antenna connector on there. And so that's all there is to it. So let's check the fit on the new joying unit. So let's just see if it actually fits. Push these guys back. And look at that, all the screws line up. So it looks like a good fit. Okay, we're not quite ready for that yet. So we'll take it out. Now the critical part of the fit is these ones here. And remember I said that you want the one with the 8 speaker wires, not the 4, so that's got more wires on this side. And that should go into this thing here. Perfect. There we go. And the other thing is we want the adapter of the antenna, which is here, and so it's should fit into this thing here. Remember I said this is keyed. There we go, perfect. And so this will now plug into the antenna plug on the back of the joying unit, and this ISO connector goes into the back of the joying unit. So when we plug the unit in principle, it should operate as it did previously. Here are the parts for my new Joying head unit, model JL001N2, designed, I hope, for the 2010 Dodge Grand Caravan minivan. Here's everything that I received from Joying. So there's the head unit, which I believe is designed with this connections on the side to fit directly into the to replace the stock radio. Here's the back of it. It's single DIN size, so it's actually smaller than the existing radio. It's also slightly tilted from the front panel, I guess, to make the fit a bit easier. It shouldn't be a problem. On the back of the unit there are a USB cable on this side, plus the, oops, you're not showing it there, USB cable plus the connector for the external microphone. I believe this is an antenna. I don't know if it's Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth. On the other side is a single USB connector. Here is the screw-in connector for the GPS antenna. Here's the connection for the FM antenna, and they provide both of these items. So here's the adapter that they provided, that has an end that fits into the existing Dodge antenna on this side, and this end is designed to fit into their head unit like that. So I should be able to connect this directly to the existing cable. They provide a GPS antenna here, which you can mount somewhere on the dash or somewhere with a view of the sky, and it's got the connector that will screw into the connection on the back of the head unit. We don't need to use these external connections. Here's the microphone that was provided with the unit. Enough cable, I hope, to get up to the visor on the driver's side, and as I mentioned, that plugs into the connector on the left rear side of the head unit. They also provide, although there's no mention of it, is a USB to mini USB, not micro but mini, which I believe goes into the front side of the unit. There's no discussion about that, but if I can open this, there seems to be a mini USB connector here, which I presume that this thing connects into. So this is nice. It gives you an extra option for connecting a USB device into the front panel. That's not something they mention. So to go over the front panel a bit, so underneath this cover there's a slot for a micro SD storage card on this side. And if I close that up and then open the other side, there's a second micro SD card slot here. I believe one of these is probably this one is the reset button to reset the unit if there's any problem. The DVD slot is not functional. There is no DVD, and I certainly didn't want it anyways. So these buttons apparently have no function on the unit. This little thing here says IR. I have no idea if there is an IR thing, and I don't really need it. This one says microphone here, and I'm not sure how that works when you have an external microphone. Maybe this is the one if there isn't an external microphone. So to continue on the back, the remaining connector is here, which is an ISO style connector, which has all the connections, power and speakers and other controls to the unit that has to connect to your existing car wiring harness. And this is where Joying has done a nice job, in my opinion, on making this thing easy to use. I haven't actually installed it yet, but I'll tell you how it works. And so this is the specific wiring harness that they provide for the 2010, probably 2009, 2011 Dodge products. And they talk about Jeeps and so on, but I believe the Grand Caravan fits in with there. And so this is the part that if you didn't have would be a lot of work to do on your own. So here is the ISO connector that plugs in to the back of the Joying unit, just above the fuse panel, and so it has a bunch of connectors and optional things on the end, and they give you two connectors which match the Dodge wiring harness. And so this looks like the one that plugs into the back of the existing stock Dodge radio. Now it's not clear why there are two, and there's only a subtle difference that I could see, is that one is labeled LEY1 and the other one is LEY2. So the difference that you can see here is that number 2 has only 4 wires into the top part of the connector, whereas LEY1 has 4 wires there and 4 wires there. And so these 8 wires correspond to the 4 speakers that exist in the Dodge Grand Caravan, and these are in my existing radio setup. The other connections are the ground, the black on the one end, and the yellow is the battery. So this is always on as far as I can tell. There's always power supplied to it. There are 2 other wires, these green wires that go to both of the connectors, which connect to the CAN bus unit in the vehicle, and this is a digital 1-bit serial communication system that allows different components to talk to each other. And it's information that comes on this data line that is used to turn the head unit on and off, or turn the radio on and off, because there's always power connected to it. And so it's essential that this CAN bus work correctly. And the way Joying has done this is they've got a CAN bus decoder, which takes those 2 green wires and decodes them and connects to the Joying DIN harness, so presumably turning on and off the radio, and perhaps other functions such as reverse or dimming controls and so on, is done by this CAN bus decoder. And so they've done a nice job of putting all that together. Now the reason for 2 of these is not clear. I'm going to go for the number 1 connector, which has the 8 speaker wires. I suspect this one is designed for those vehicles which have a built-in external amplifier underneath the left driver's kick panel. So I think I don't need to use that. Most of the connections are jumpered together, so either one seems to have most of the functions. The only wire which I haven't been able to understand is this orange one, which comes with on both of them. They're jumpered together between the 2, so that's this jumper thing here, and there's a brown wire that goes to the CAN bus decoder and goes somewhere else into this thing and goes to the DIN connector. And so there's some purpose for this, but all of the wiring diagrams I've seen for my vehicle show that there's no connection to this particular pin. So I'm hoping that it's an optional thing and is not important. Also on this wiring harness is some things I won't use. This is, I think, for the power antenna, and so they've got it with just a stub on it, so I won't connect that. The RCA connector here is for the rear view camera. I don't have that, but you can certainly buy one from Joying. There's also something labeled Key 1, which I don't know anything about. Perhaps that's the on-wheel steering controls. Who knows? I'll find out if that works or not. So, basically they've got all the connections you need, as far as I can see, and you just need one of these two to connect to your vehicle wiring harness. The other item which I got, which is optional, is a dash cam. They call it a DVR, which has a USB connection. And there's some adhesive thing on the bottom, and it looks like there's actually a micro SD card that's already in there. Apparently this has its own internal storage, and somehow communicates with the head unit over the USB. So I think this just sits on the dash and looks in the forward direction. Okay, I've done all the fishing of wires I think that's required. So we have where the original radio was. We have the new Joying specific harness for their radio, which is connecting to their wiring harness. And remember, I have a spare one here with only 4 wires for speakers, presumably for the amplifier, and the other stuff we're not using. And this is ready to plug into the back of the Joying radio. I've put the antenna adapter on, provided by Joying. So here's the original Dodge antenna connector. The white part goes on to the Joying connector, which will go back into their radio. Now I've managed to put the pretty nice dressing of cables through there. So in here, I went up, there's a nice little round hole, which I can show you with a little plug that was provided by Dodge. Perhaps with my mind in mind. And so I put through there the USB cable that goes to the dash cam, the DVR they call it. And so I fed that one, I fed both cables from the top of the dash and back, and it's useful to have a wire, an aluminum wire, to use to pull these cables through. So that's another tool that's required. I also have in here somewhere is the GPS wire, which is the GPS antenna is mounted up on top, and I also have the connector for the microphone, which I've mounted up on the driver's left side. Now it's nice, there's lots of room in this cavity here to feed cables down behind the radio where the wiring harness goes, and so I was able to go up underneath the driver's knee area, dress it up, and then bring it up through the pillar to the shade, and so that should be connected. Now, one extra thing not provided by Joying is an extension USB cable, which I've just fed through from the radio area and into the top glove compartment here. And again, there was a nice little square plug that was provided by Dodge, which I just popped out and is able to run the USB through there. Now, in principle, you don't need this. You could push the antenna, the USB cable on the back of the radio unit through there, but I wanted to be able to remove everything, and so this is independent. And so now I'm going to make all the connections, but first I want to find where the GPS cable went. It's in there somewhere. I've also bundled these up nicely, so there it is, so that they look a bit neater. So there's the GPS cable. Stuff certainly gets tangled in no time. Okay, so I'm going to connect the the microphone to this side, and I'm going to connect the USB extension to the same side. And the advantage of that is I can push and pull the excess in the back after the fact. So that's one USB. The other USB is going to the dash cam, which is right there, and the antenna is here, and the whole wiring harness, the ISO connector goes here. The other USB out of the way. Okay, I'm trying to do it backwards. This one seems to have a little clip on it that you would push to disconnect it. So that's it, as far as I know. I think I haven't forgotten. Oh no, the GPS antenna has to go here. That screws in. So I think that's everything. So I'm just going to shove everything back here and maybe fix this up later. I hope there's enough room for everything. Make sure it doesn't get pinched. There we go. All done. Now, next step is to turn it on. I'll go to the accessory position.
Hi, Dave.
Hi, Tony. Oh, and it pops up almost immediately. Look at that. It must have already been booting since I plugged in the antenna. Or since I plugged in the power supply.